Hi there. So this session is to cover off around on-demand Sandbox from storage snapshots from Veeam. It was released in version 9 early in 2016. My take on it, though, is around the NetApp and Veeam integration. So in particular, I've branded it FlexClone on steroids. I'm Michael Cade. I'm a systems engineer at Veeam Software. You can find me on Twitter at MichaelCade1, and I'm also a member of the NetApp A team, which is the advocate program run by NetApp. So just to give you a background around NetApp and Veeam, so there's really 2 to 3 plays where we sit well with NetApp integration from a Veeam perspective, and that's one, from an orchestration point of view, being able to orchestrate the snapshot lifespan, and then also taking a backup of those snapshots off to a second media type, which could also involve NetApp storage, i.e. either E-Series or Ultivolt. And we can also orchestrate that over to a secondary NetApp FAS controller via SnapVault, SnapMirror. And then you'll see down the bottom, it doesn't matter. From a Veeam perspective, we're completely storage agnostic. So it's storage completely plays into what we're trying to do. And then from a NetApp perspective, an E-Series is a great backup storage device for cheap, high-density backup target. And then we've also got NetApp Ultivolt, which provides us with that cloud-integrated storage that allows us to get to a cloud for longer-term retention. So just firstly, a bit about FlexClone from a NetApp perspective. If you haven't heard of it, it's really a case of taking that production snapshot that you've taken, so that the changes since the last snapshot, being able to turn that into a read-write copy of that without taking a full copy of the volume. Basically, we're going to be pointing to the existing data blocks, and then the only time you impact any storage is actually writing any new data to the storage. So ultimately, we're going to be taking a point in time snapshot that points to the existing data blocks, allowing us to have a complete separate entity and provision that to whatever application or server that you'd like to. And great for that testing, bug fixing, etc. But also really storage efficient, because we're not having to take a complete copy of all the data. If that was something that you wanted to do, so you could spin up multiple FlexClones off snapshots, you can absolutely break them away as well. So you're not tied to always using the FlexClone technology. A FlexClone can be split away from the parent volume. So why did Veeam do it, really? Why Veeam brought this technology in, the on-demand Sandbox from storage snapshots? And really, from a FlexClone point of view, as I've said, absolutely brilliant technology. And in small environments, it's absolutely brilliant, because you can bring up a test and dev environment with 30, 40 machines pretty quick, have them talking to each other. There's not a lot of manual intervention that needs to happen. However, so obviously on screen, connect to a storage system, then you have to create that snapshot or use an existing snapshot that you've already got in play. All very fast tasks. Create a FlexClone, again, it doesn't take any time to do that. But then this is where it could start to get quite a lengthy process. So exporting a volume or multiple volumes and LUNs that contain your virtual machine estate, if they're on different volumes, different disks, etc. Adding those virtual machines to the inventory. So i.e. going in and adding each of those virtual machines to the inventory, and then having to change each one's networking. It could be, if you're talking any more than 20, 30, it's going to be a painstaking process. Obviously, there is tools out there that can automate this. WFA, PowerShell, I imagine PowerCLI could probably do something similar, but it's another added interface to your workload. Then powering it on in an order that you want, so domain controllers first, and then maybe your application servers or your back-end database servers, then your application servers, etc., etc. Then running your test and dev. Obviously, that window isn't going to change. We can't make you work quicker. And then the power down. So to cleanly take it away from the environment, we have to power it down. Potentially not in a nice manner. Just we need to power it down. We need to remove the virtual machines from the inventory. We need to remove those data stores, and then we need to go and remove that FlexClone. So there's quite a few lengthy tasks there. So bring in the FlexClone on steroids, as I say. So our Veeam backup server orchestrates that initial primary snapshot. So that's application consistent. If we're triggering that snapshot, we then orchestrate that, i.e. we're able to see inside that snapshot, we're able to do many different tasks with that snapshot, mounting that snapshot also. So then we're able to create a virtual lab, so that is spinning up a virtual switch. That's potentially creating multiple virtual switches depending on the networks that we need access to. And that's all self-contained in this virtual lab. And if by all means reach out to me on Twitter or via email and touch base with me on that one. We're then automating the VMs being powered on in that virtual lab and potentially any IP address changes that we need to do within that. And then at the end, we're powering that down, remove all that cleanup. So those steps that we saw before are what we're basically automating it. And what I want to do now is jump into a demo just to show you how it looks. And here we have a job. We have our NetApp Snapshots job that really just runs during the day, taking hourly snapshots onto the local NetApp cloud storage that I have in my lab demo. And then once a day, it takes a backup from that storage snapshot off to a secondary piece of storage. So from this, in my backup infrastructure, I've created an application group called OnDemand Sandbox of storage snapshots, NetApp, and if we go into this, you can see that there are two virtual machines that are captured in here, one iSCSI and one NFS. And then what I'll do is I'll show you, so also a virtual lab, which is basically just a vSwitch on one of my hosts, literally two ESXi hosts, three ESXi hosts. That I have relatively small, lots of direct attached storage, and I'm currently using the Data OnTap Edge virtual appliance. So just showing you, so it's on my one host, it's using a local data store, it's going to use the local proxy that we have, the networking is going to stay the same. If I had an application group that needed to span then multiple, a whole cluster maybe, or a complete test and dev, this is where we can point our snapshot to those different environments. So just to show you the environment, so you'll see this is my virtual lab I've created, this is my OnTap Edge appliance, and then you'll see that I've also got an iSCSI machine here that sits on a iSCSI data store, which is presented from that OnTap Edge box, and then also you'll see an NFS one, just to simulate both functions in this environment. If I jump back, I already have that machine made. It's a case of I also have a job already made, and I'll just run through that so you get to see how simple and easy it looks from an interface point of view. So obviously give it a name. We choose that virtual lab that I chose. So depending on the different virtual labs or requirements that you have for that application group, we can choose different virtual labs accordingly. We choose our application group. So in this instance, I want to choose my OnDemand Sandbox of storage snapshots because it's going to use the source storage snapshots. And this is key here. So we can automate it as a sure backup job. So a sure backup is the verification of our backups being in a good, consistent state. And all verified so that it tests the VM, the app, and the operating system so that they're all consistent and in a good state, so that you're verifying that the backup is good. So what this tick box will do is keep the application group running and after the job completes. So basically a few ping tests, heartbeat tests, etc. It's going to keep it running, and that really is so that we can then run our test and dev environment. Any linked jobs that we want to run, so it could be potentially other application groups. So job results, obviously notification wise, if you wanted to send an email, if this was a sure backup, so a verification job, then you might want to see and also backup file integrity check. We can then run a schedule. For this instance, it is purely a test and on production storage that I want to be running. And I tick that final box. This is then going to start, and this is then going to probably take some time, even because it's on my lab environment. But just bear in mind that I've always had virtual lab from a Veeam perspective, so being able to spin up an isolated network or an isolated environment using your backup data, but it's been from the backup storage, so generally a second tier, so not performant. Whereas this, what we're going to be doing is running these virtual machines actually from the NetApp storage. So giving you full production performance at no extra storage cost. So things like if you had a SQL database that you required to run data mining against, potentially reporting, and you didn't want to affect, or it was currently affecting your production when you were running this task, you could spin this up in an isolated network on some separate hosts or potentially a separate data center and bring that up and run those data mining tests. Take your data that you need from that and then drop it all in a consistent manner, and you're not leaving anything behind. It's not a manual. You'll see that once this gets running, we're going to see these virtual machines appear in my virtual center underneath this virtual lab. You'll see that the virtual lab has now started, and you're going to start to see a couple of those two machines spin up in this virtual lab environment in that isolated network on this ONTAP edge performance storage, as it were. Whilst that is still running, I can jump down into the storage infrastructure and I can show you how this looks from this interface. So bearing in mind this feature, the OnDemand Sandbox from Storage Snapshots is an Enterprise Plus feature, as is the backup from Storage Snapshot function from a Veeam licensing perspective. So I have two ONTAP Edge instances running ONTAP 8.3.1. One sits on one of my hosts and one sits on the other, basically simulating a two-site active-active solution. So you can see here on the ONTAP HL that you can see I've got a VM data store iSCSI 1 and I've got an NFS also. So you can see within that you can see from the iSCSI 1 that I have two LUNs. One is our root, basically, so this is the root, so the operating system for that particular storage virtual machine. And then we have my iSCSI data store, VMFS data store. And in which case I can open that, I can see that there is one virtual machine in there. And this is the Veeam Explorer that allows us to do this. We can ping that and bring that up on, do guest files, application items, and instant VM recovery. What that will allow, that feature, the Veeam Explorer for Storage Snapshots, is actually a free feature within Veeam. So if we go down, this is also, so Veeam Explorer for Storage Snapshots, if you've already been a NetApp existing customer using just native snapshots as this root, as there's no virtual machines in there, but it would ultimately, you'd be able to see a crash consistent copy of that virtual machine within that. So it's not a case of everything, once you switch over to Veeam plus NetApp, you're not losing anything that you had before. So again, if we look, these are the native, these are the root accounts, this is the root volume, sorry, and then this is our root data store. There's a bit more going on here because I do have a daily snapshot, a scheduled non-crash consistent. So for that matter, we can open that and we can see crash consistent. Whereas if I go into a Veeam source, we can see that it's application consistent. And again, we can run those instant VM restores, and this is from an NFS. So both different variants of block and SAN. Obviously, the ONTAP Edge VSA as such doesn't have fiber channel connectivity. We've run our heartbeat test, we've run our ping test, and we've run our scripts if we did have any configured. We've isolated our network to the virtual lab network that we have, and we've completely passed all of those tests, and we've powered that on. So waiting for the OS, and then we'll proceed to the next step. Basically, that machine should be up and ready for us to work with, and we'll be moving on to the NFS one as we speak. But if I minimize now, we will see that our iSCSI machine is in there, up and running. If we look at the machine itself, we have something called a snap, but we also have a VMware data store. So this is locally attached. This is for any new write. Basically, we don't want to touch the snapshot, even though it is a FlexClone, but it offers a different, like a Delta disk. So any writes that we do write to it will hit this data store here. Also, you'll see down here that we've got our virtual lab 1 VM network. You'll see there's a long number here as well. So the BBC, this is basically a UID just to keep it away from this live. So in theory, if I had enough compute resources, these two machines could still be powered on, serving production data. A system management point of view, how this looks. So under our storage virtual machine, under our storage, under our LUNs, like I say, there was we have our root, and we have so here is basically our FlexClone LUN. But if we look into volumes first, you can see those two. You're going to see our root, which we said there's just normal scheduled snapshots running, and our LUN contains our LUN volume contains our LUN. So this is the live one, the top one, and this is my LUN restore, which is using FlexClone. And if we go down to snapshot copies, and so from that you'll see, so LUN ID is 1 on this one, and LUN ID on there is 0. But also, because we use this for backup from storage snapshots, we'll also see that we have a LUN ID of 1 here for the lab Veeam of my proxy that I have. So also with this in mind is that the OnDemand, the FlexClone on steroids, could be run from a snap mirrored or a snap vaulted volume replication as well. So really, you don't have to rely on production compute to be able to run this. You can actually run it over in a secondary or a third site. Something else that we brought out in version 9 was the ability to not only trigger that orchestration between a primary FAS and a secondary FAS, is the ability to actually pull the backup now from the secondary FAS, completely eliminating that impact on the production. So there we go, and now we have the second machine now kicking off. See, now that we've got these two up and running, we can hit on them. We can get into those machines, and we can do what we need to do within those machines in regards to our test and development. And then the key bit to this is that it's going to remove all of that. It's going to remove all of the FlexClone. It's going to remove all the presentation. So you'll see here we've got our VM data store. We've got our SCSI, basically our snapshot that's presented in a read-write state, so that we can see it. We jump over to the console, so the system manager of NetApp, which is used to manage that. It's going to remove this LUN. It's going to remove the snapshot, our NFS restore. If we go down to here, we're going to see a busy clone, which is basically we're using this snapshot from the 22nd of February to bring up that machine and basically create this FlexClone. And then we've done all of the mounting. So if we go down to namespace, we're going to see both of these. So this is my production. It's using the default export policy, which is a lazy way of doing it, because ultimately you want it to go to a secure default policy and export policy. But then this one is also going to the same one. So if we go into change, if we go into policy and we have a look at the default export policy, you can see that we're exporting it to basically the whole subnet. Basically remove this restore LUN, tidy up all the VMware side of things as well, removing all of that, removing these two machines, obviously powering them down. So you'll see now both of them virtual machines are up and started. So what we want to do now is bring that down. So just to reiterate there, obviously this is on a slow home lab demo bit of hardware running just SATA disks. So really what we want to do is stop that session. So once we're happy that them machines we're done with, we've got all the information that we need out of those, we can either turn them off in host and just leave them powered off there, or we can just let Veeam do that for us. So basically a stop session, we'll trigger that, send in the email report, as you can see there with the final bit. We can see that now it's powering off those and cleaning up those redo logs that we sent to a local data store. Again, you choose the data store as part of the Sure Backup and Virtual Lab setup. I'm publishing, so if we bounce back into here, we're going to see that the NFS one has already gone, and we'll now see that the iSCSI, you'll see one that's disappeared, and this one's now on publishing. So if we jump back, we're now going to have seen that, and we will see our virtual lab machine now powered off. We see that reconfigured then back to how it was, and we see task onto here. We'll see if we run a refresh, we lose our LUN out of there, and if we jump back into the NFS data store, again, you'll see that it's now disappeared. Also freeing up that the 22nd, I think it was at 10:05. It wasn't in that, it was on this one, but you'll see that it's no longer busy. I believe it was this one that we were using. Again, you can see that all them namespaces, all them mappings have been removed nicely. Now, yes, it's taken 30 minutes on my home lab, but ultimately we've got what we want from a test dev, and we're running on performant production storage at no real extra cost, but we're fully automating that process using the Veeam plus NetApp integration that we have. By all means, send me the speeds and feeds that you get from this. So I'd really like to know how fast you can spin up an environment and how many virtual machines consist of that environment. Please get in touch at MichaelCade1 on Twitter. Thanks very much.